Hello and welcome to Warblog. This is an experimental game to introduce police units and protesters. We'll try and get down to some of the action sooner rather than later, just to demonstrate the sort of the process. No, that shouldn't be there. Anyway, let's figure that out later. So essentially got some new sort of things in place. So essentially protesters and police. Now the thing with the protesters is not really sort of protesters as you might imagine them directly, in the sense that they're not always marching down the street. They're basically almost insurgents. They're basically the genesis of insurgents. So they'll be, for example, in some of these instances, let's go back. What I've done here, this is sort of southeast Turkey. I haven't finished this, but I'm not sure how much further I'm going to get. It's a load of blurb. So you've got some police units, etc. And then basically, what I've done, I've got all of January. Now I haven't done everything because I'll explain why in a bit. But basically, each one of these is sort of like an event or some kind of activity. So, for example, we start off with some protesters in Kurs, nothing really, and some insurgents. Now, I don't want to put too many insurgents. I'll go into why that in a bit. But the headline there is mine trap set by PKK. I've got all this from the Wikipedia Turkish-Kurdish Conflict link, which you'll see there. So if you look at that, this is almost a random link, to be quite honest. This is just the first one. Each one of these sort of has a link, but anyway. So then on the 4th of January, there's the rocket attacks at Sirnak. So, and you'll find Sirnak is pretty much there. So what you'll see is that when you put your mouse over, you can actually see what the sort of event was. Now I haven't done all of them. I'll start to explain that in a bit. But as you'll see over time, lots more of these sort of protesters and insurgents, and there's some irregulars there. A lot more events sort of coming up, you know. So 14th of January, heavy clashes. 15th of January, policemen killed by sniper fire. So these protesters are sort of they've done that as well. So they're very similar to insurgents, but they're a lot weaker. They're more like the genesis, sort of how it starts. So sometimes there's rocket fired by PKK, nighttime IED, sniper fire, heavy clashes, demonstration. People were planning a demonstration, rather clashes, rocket and sniper fire clashes, armed attacks. They're all based on the actual history. So this is the 29th of January. So I've done the first month. Now, the problem we've got, so to speak, is, for example, one particular event is, you can see the airplane, well, we'll come back to that in a second. One particular event is 12th of January, targeted by Turkish airstrikes. Well, these are basically irregular units. So the only regular units so far on the board. And they're actually in Iraq. And what happens on that day? The Turkey send over more than just one unit, but I've kept it as one just to keep it proper. They send over one unit targeting the irregulars in Iraq. The thing is, you're not going to destroy that irregular with one sortie, and you could probably use your air power against protesters, so it gets a bit odd. But the thing is, what will happen then is this unit will be left over. Because you won't kill it directly, So what going forward? If I kept putting an irregular on every time, say, some sniper fire was done or some rockets were fired, there'd be this massive insurgency. Whereas the protesters are actually a lot easier to kill. So if we actually sort of go back to my record thing is over the button, so I'll just have to play it again. So basically, I can't really do the whole year without there being sort of masses of these things suddenly appearing. But the whole idea is you can sort of use your police force to go around and beat them up. Now the thing is, if you have normal military units versus protesters, they're zero defence, and so zero basically against anything is going to be 7-to-1 odds. But I don't want that, and even 7-to-1 you can get a sort of just a defender retreat, as opposed, but most of the time you can get an elimination. But if they're fighting just against the police, then their defence value is 0.15. That might not sound a lot, but when you're in hills, when you're doubled, so that's 0.3. So you're only going to be getting 3-to-1, which makes them pretty tough. But even so, 3-to-1 is pretty good. So basically, I've not played it yet, in the sense that I don't really know how it's going to work out. Like I say, this air power shouldn't be there just yet. But just to reiterate the sort of the drawback, so to speak, and I might have a think, maybe to think about how that actually pans out, is over time, absolutely tons of these things are going to appear, and if you don't actually start killing them, then they can actually start doing things which aren't scheduled events. That's the thing, you see. So if we sort of get to it, now basically we've got this event here, so we've got this mine trap, well that's an insurgent. Well the thing is, there's no one for him to blow up, so his event is sort of like not taking place. So it's a very, the whole thing I'm trying to get here, communicate here, is it's not an exact duplication. It's based on that. So the fact that he's sort of there is based on the fact that that there were people setting mines. So it could act sort of differently, but it's not the Kurds' turn at the moment. So there's nothing they can really do about that. In theory, because I don't really even know about it, but in theory I could sort of move down here and maybe attack it. Maybe I could do that. But what we've got down here is this sort of event. Protesters in Kurds. Well, that's actually the name. So I don't know what. I didn't actually. This is probably one of the first ones I did, and I don't think I put the event on that. But let's just to get cut to the chase. So we're actually going to go and take that out. So the police are coming in to deal with these protesters in Kurds, and a hell of a lot of stuff happens around here. This is the real hotbed around here. So let's just see what the odds are, and it might not actually even work. Okay, well it didn't work because I didn't get the. Obviously it's at 7-to-1, but the thing is, it's not the end of the world. I did actually think of leaving it. So the police have gone in and basically they've dealt with these protesters who have now been eliminated. Now that might sound really easy. It's a bit like when I was sort of putting it together, I think, well, this is going to be a bit like hitting the rabbit, sort of one of those hitting the mole things where you've got a hammer and you've got to hit all these things. They keep popping up. But let's go in there. Now the thing is, if you don't take them out, so we've got no more movement left with him. I haven't actually done this bit yet. It's got no more movement. I haven't done this bit yet. What I'm about to say is, when it's their turn, so to speak, the protesters can actually contest these towns, and that's pretty much how the balance is being sort of played out. So if these protesters can remain unchallenged, they will slowly start to turn these to grey and then to red, so that they're their own objectives. And so the whole simulation is really about the police managing these protesters and the insurgents, etc., etc. So that's pretty much that. We've got a lot of other units up here, so I don't really want to start just fiddling around too much with them. Now, this is under development, so there'll probably be a lot more of these objective hexes, and obviously it's the objectives that you want to be sort of saving. But there are more objectives than there are police, because otherwise what you could do, you could just sit on the objectives. But another thing that will happen is the protesters will actually appear in that hex. It's still something I can't do much about. Anyway, just save worrying about moving around too much. I'll sort of leave it at that. move him to there. Why not? So on the next turn, which represents the next week, well, it doesn't because we've got the first turn stupid thing in place there. So now we've got more of these things appearing. As you can see, the protesters have appeared in with these in with the police. So they might sort of say, hang on, like, how can my counters coexist? And to some extent, it's just something I can't really do much about at the moment in the way that the game works. But the easy way to sort of figure that out now, the easy way to sort of deal with that is you just move the Kurds out, and then you sort of move them back in. Now, the thing is, as you can see, I'm still sort of thinking about how this works. Obviously, I can't attack the police because I haven't got any offensive attack. I haven't got any offensive sort of bonuses or abilities. So basically, in this instance, I'm going to move which movement has he got? Oh, right. That's interesting. Zones of control. Okay. Okay, so they're both stuck in the zone of control. I don't know how he managed to get through there. That would have been the zone of control. Anyway, we'll go and harass this place. We're going to harass this place. This irregular unit shouldn't be there. He should be over there, so I'll have to relocate him. And as you can see, we've got a lot of protesters in Silopi. Presumably they've all got their own particular events. So this one is heavy clashes. Well, this one is heavy clashes on the 14th. This one is heavy clashes on the 14th. And this one is clashes on the 10th. So we'll leave these guys here. Now, he should have stayed in there, shouldn't he, really? Because now we've got that. So basically what's sort of missing at the moment, that's one of the reasons I'm sort of just playing this, is to figure it out and kill two birds with one stone, is they will be able to start taking these objectives down. Now, as I said, the defence didn't seem to work, so I will be fiddling with that as well. But generally speaking, it should be quite easy for the police to deal with the protesters, because that's sort of why they're called protesters. Although they may be sometimes armed, even with rockets, carrying out quite significant attacks, etc., etc. They're easily sort of repulsed, and orders relatively easy because that's how they're working. So the fact that we defender eliminated the protesters, it's not quite the same as in the military sense of losing units. I mean, they basically disperse. So the whole idea is they are supposed to be quite weak. The police are running around, trying to deal with these things, and that's sort of what this is trying to replicate. Now, it's not really sort of something that you can sort of how do I win this or something. It's really just a sort of model simulation based on what we've got here, and also dealing with the whole idea that Turkey's in a civil war, and I don't like to sort of say, oh, Turkey's in a civil war, panic, but I mean, if you actually sort of look through what's happening there, I mean, unless I'm missing something, because I haven't actually looked up how do you define a civil war. It does look as though it's pretty violent out there. 2,500 people dying in a year. Bombs going off, rocket attacks. They're not firework rockets; they're rockets. Sniper fire, etc. So it's pretty hairy out there, and hopefully you can sort of get an idea of, the sort of the frequency and the nature of all these attacks that are going on. I'm going to leave it there. It's getting up to 15 minutes. I don't think I'll do any more of this. I'll try and fix what I've spotted. So, speak to you later. Cheers, bye. Okay, I'm continuing. I've made a few adjustments, so I just wanted to continue with those adjustments made. Although this thing is really slow now for some reason. Let's try to shut down a couple of things over there. Anyway, so let's sort of look at this situation here. So we've got the police, they can go in and do their, so they go into restore order. Now basically, because these were protesters, their defence was, I can't remember what it was now, but I think it was 0.15. Might have done it at 0.1, so it's quite small, but the thing is, as opposed to 0, so instead of being 7 to 1, if this was a military unit, this would have been 7 to 1. But because it was police, there is some resistance, so 3 to 1, and this is in the hills, so it's still pretty good. I did it last time and got a 2, and defender eliminated. So essentially, these protesters are a little tougher to get, but we can at least sort of get in there now. I have to sort of come out of here and then go back in to do the assault. It's a bit of faffing around, but it's just tough. So again, another 3 to 1 odd with a defender retreat. So, and they've got 2 depression. So you know that's sort of how it's working. I mean, for example, if we want to, as the police, attack this large stack here of 3 lots of protesters, we might find that there's too many rioters, protesters, whatever you want to call them, for one unit to deal with. So that was a 1 to 1, and that was a die roll of 12. So the police actually routed in that instance. The police had to, you know, there was just too many. And so the police are now at depression 2, and these, you know, rioters are having a whale of a time. So that's that. There's obviously a lot of activity down here. As I said, I could do well spreading this out so that you get time to deal with everything, because it's just going to come through thick and fast, maybe too thick and fast. So we've got some police down here protecting that town. But let's move up here and see what sort of roll we can get. Well, that was 7 to 1 that time. Oh right, that's because they're insurgents. Now because they're insurgents, they should have just retreated. Yeah, so they retreated down to there. Insurgents will always retreat because they're trying to hide. So we'll end that turn anyway. We do have these units down here, so we do actually have the air power now, but I'm not going to use it. I just want to sort of flap about really. So it's now the Kurds' turn. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate here, in theory, if it works, is, let me see where I can do it. That might work to good effect. Okay, here might sort of do well. So, well, basically, they're insurgents. So, basically, what I'm looking at is zones of control. So, let me try this unit here. Okay, and he's still got 2 movements. So but essentially, as protesters, we can ignore zones of control. So if you recall back to earlier where I came out there, I got stuck in a zone of control. I just filtered it, so I don't have to worry about that. But we can't attack anyone because we're only at 0. So these protesters, sort of, you've got to sort of look at it a little adroitly, really, in the sense that we're not. This isn't a specific unit. It's modelled on a sort of. This isn't a specific event. It's modelled on an event. So we've got all these sort of units running around trying to do things. So we've now gone to that town there. What I'm going to try and do in this instance, actually, is to, and you'll see why in a second. Okay. Now, I can't move through that town because there's police in there. And because there's police in there, I'm not going to stay in there with that unit. I'm going to move these. What I'm trying to do here is to take as many towns as I can. So I'm piling up in these places, but the insurgents don't really count for that. So what these insurgents are going to do, they're going to attack that unit there. So they're attacking as insurgent units, which is the sniper fire, the mortar fire, rockets. The insurgent action succeeded, inflicting 3 depressions. So he's now reduced. Now the significance of that reduction means that if this police unit now goes in to deal with these, they'll be a lot weaker. So we'll actually do that attack next time. We won't do anything with him. So what this is modelling is sort of, the effects of that we've been reading about in the Wikipedia article. Sniper fire, roadside bombs, rocket attacks, things like that. That's what are coming through from these guys here. The protesters are sort of, to some extent, less of that, but more of the sort of, they're not walking around with flags saying, no more whatever, down with whatever, whoever. They are sort of the similar sort of level of thing. But what we're going to demonstrate here, hopefully, is if we end the turn. Okay, so what you can see now is that in here, this unit has gone from 10 down to 8.5. Now, it's worked there. Oh, I see how this works. I think I see how this works. They have to have spent their whole turn there. Because I moved in that turn, I didn't get it. But because he was already there, it's gone down. So it goes down 0.5. Now, the thing that I sort of don't get is that seems to have gone down 1.5, unless I've got 3 units in there, which I don't. So, I don't know why that's done that, so let me have a look. So this one's gone down correctly. This one sort of thought, I think I know what's wrong. There's another unit in there that's due to come out. These things are always frustrating. But anyway, you can see that we're contesting these towns. So basically, the whole point of the protester action, so to speak, is that they're going around to all these towns creating disorder. Now, it's taken quite a while, but there's 3 units in there in theory, although one of them is sort of due to appear sort of next turn or something. It's a shadow unit. But here it's worked correctly, just to show you the map again. It's gone down 0.5. There's a lot to appear in there, so it's not would come out correctly. I'll sort that next. But basically, that's how that is working. So it's now the Turkish turn. So basically, this is where it sort of works. So we've got to get rid of those protesters, because obviously if they stay there, they will convert the town and win an objective. So we got rid of them, but we didn't manage to destroy them. It was just a DR. So, but now we're back in control, and the protesters won't be able to move the police out. I mean, obviously that's just the way it works. But you can sort of say, okay, well that means we can go over to this place and start taking that, etc., etc. This is a new unit that appeared on top of the other unit. But here we've got this unit that's depressed 3 from the insurgent attack, the rocket attack, or sniper attack, or IED, whatever you want to think, interpret that. I mean, in this case, it was a car bomb, 14th of January car bomb targeting a police station. So, obviously it's not a mobile police station, but it's sort of, this sort of stuff is happening. So this unit is suffering a little. So when they go in to move these protesters out, it's down from 3 to 1, which would have been before, down to a 2 to 1, and they got the best die roll ever. So that was the difference between a defender eliminated and a DR, because if they were at full strength 3 to 1, the die roll of 1 would have been a DE. So, the police are not completely ineffective, but they have been injured. Now the insurgent unit won't be active for another 5 turns, so they are sort of pretty limited. I mean, they're not particularly massively strong, but it's caused some damage there, and that's basically what this is all modelling. So I think that's sort of pretty much the ins and outs of these protester units, police units, and sort of the way that sort of combat works. I mean, I must say, it's the first time I've done this, so I'm sort of thinking, well, does this work? And I sort of think it's got some interesting elements to it. I mean, you can certainly sort of see that there's, a lot of, disorder, civil disorder in this part of the world, and how this sort of reflects that. I don't think it's sort of something you could say it's a model, but I certainly think you could draw some analogies or some parallels with what's happening, and I mean, just the fact that the scale of it and the geography of it. I mean, if you look at some of the actual reports, I think there is actually a website basically just dealing with this sort of conflict. It has lots of sort of circles showing the intensity. The bigger the circle, the more of this sort of activity there is. But what you'll see is it's a lot of it down on the border here, and that's why we've got this base here, and these irregulars, they should be over there, and the Turkish planes, to actually attack them. And let's just do that for the hell of it. And we caused 1 damage on that, which isn't much use. Now again, that's just, I think I've repeated this earlier, but that means now we've got an irregular unit in play, and a regular unit's quite strong because they'll actually be able to go in and fight the police, etc, etc. But that's why we've got this motorised unit. So there are some sort of military units going around, and obviously the military units can deal with the protesters, but that's not really what they're there for. They're there to sort of deal with any of this heavy stuff. These irregulars are not going to come out if we've got these mechanised units around, although they will get a good assault against that. So I'm not going to have too many irregulars appearing at all. But what I was thinking when I drew it up was clearly this is Iraq here, down here. I haven't put the labels or anything, but if I can get the game balance where it becomes key to actually maintain your units over the border. So we've got a verbal rule, Turkey can't go over into the Iraqi border. Then you could actually start sort of, raiding, into Turkey to take out these towns and, to assault the police and all these sorts of things. So, there's a lot to it. As I say, I'm still sort of developing it. I've only got through the January thing. I'm not sure I'm going to do it a lot. I might not do anything more than January, just because it doesn't scale out. I'm tempted to, as I said already, to change it to 1 turn a day, giving it a 365 day gameplay. And I'm not going to go through and do it all, do that, because I don't think anyone's going to play the game anyway. I don't think anyone's going to play 365 days, and I'm not sure I really want to sit there and actually, enter all that stuff in. But I think if this was sort of taking place on a day-to-day basis, then, when I do the end turn, for example, I don't think it happened that time, but let's do the end turn again. Well, what I was trying to sort of, it's turn 5, so basically everything is now on the board. But basically, when you do an end turn, you get a whole bunch of new stuff coming on. So anyway, it's nearly 15 minutes, so I'm going to mix this up with the other one. I'm not going to do any more. This is the early stages for protester police type scenarios, and I'll speak to you later. Cheers, mate.